I'm president, I will work with anyone in this chamber to build on this momentum. But I intend to fight obstruction with action, and I will oppose any effort to return to the very same policies that brought on this economic crisis in the first place.
Love and happiness, yeah, something that can make you do wrong, make you do right, yeah. Love
that we have. And we've had this discussion before. Speaker Gingrich was hired by Freddie Mac to promote them, to influence other people throughout Washington, encouraging them to not to dismantle these two entities. I think that was an enormous mistake. I think instead we should have had a whistleblower and not a horn tooter. He should have stood up and said, look, these things are a disaster. This is a crisis. He should have been anxiously telling the American people that these entities were causing a housing bubble that would cause a collapse that we've seen here in Florida and around the country. And are they a problem today? Absolutely. They're offering mortgages, again, to people who can't possibly repay them. We're creating another housing bubble which will hurt the American people.
Start by saying Florida is one of the 2 or 3 most hard-hit states on foreclosures. How many of you know somebody who's had a house foreclosed? Just raise your hand. Raise your hand. Okay. The governor has cheerfully been attacking me inaccurately, and he knows it. The contracts we released from Freddie Mac said I would do no consulting. Wrote in, no lobbying, none. But there's a more interesting story. We began digging in after Monday night because, frankly, I'd had about enough of this. We discovered, to our shock, Governor Romney owns shares of both Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Governor Romney made $1 million off of selling some of that. Governor Romney owns share and has an investment in Goldman Sachs, which is today foreclosing on Floridians. So maybe Governor Romney, in the spirit of openness, should tell us how much money he's made off of how many households that have been foreclosed by his investments. But let's be clear about that.
As I mentioned last debate, in 2006, I went out and authored a letter with 24 other senators asking for major reform of Freddie and Fannie, warning of a meltdown and a bubble in the housing market. I stood out, I stood tall, and tried to get a reform, and we couldn't do it. The reform we need is to gradually decrease the amount of mortgage that it can be financed by Freddie or underwritten by Freddie and Fannie over time. Keep reducing that until we get rid of Fannie and Freddie.
I'm president, I will work with anyone in this chamber to build on this momentum. But I intend to fight obstruction with action, and I will oppose any effort to return to the very same policies that brought on this economic crisis in the first place.
love and happiness. But wait a minute, something's going wrong.
I've earned the money that I have. I didn't inherit it. I take risk. I make investment. Those investments lead to jobs being created in America. I'm proud of being successful. I'm proud of being in the free enterprise system that creates jobs for other people. I'm not going to run from that. I'm proud of the taxes I pay. My taxes plus my charitable contributions this year, 2011, will be about 40%.
I thought it was unusual, and I don't know of any American president who's had a Swiss bank account. I'd be glad for you to explain that sort of thing.
Oh, of course not. No, I was, at the time Ronald Reagan was president, I was just getting started. I went through school, came out of school, got my first job, worked my way up in a consulting company, and then after a while started a business of my own. I was looking at politics from afar and learning as time went on. I didn't get involved in politics early in my life. I instead spent my time building a business. And then later, as my business had been successful and we'd been involved in some turnaround situations, some businesses in trouble that we were able to help. Not all worked out as we'd hoped, but a number did. And put aside my business and went to Utah, and was perhaps the greatest professional experience of my life, going there and spending 3 years.
Well, it's increasingly interesting to watch the Romney attack machine coordinate things. And all of a sudden today, there are like 4 different articles by 4 different people that randomly show up. The fact is, I'm thrilled that Michael Reagan has endorsed me and will be campaigning with me here in Florida. I remember very fondly in 1995 when we were at the Goldwater Institute, And Nancy Reagan said, you know, Barry gave Ronnie the torch, and now Ronnie's passing the torch to Newt and his team in Congress. So I think it's reasonable to say, and I think the governor said it fairly, I am vastly closer to Reagan. In that period, the governor was an independent business person. In '92, he was donating to Democrats for Congress.
To settle for a country where a shrinking number of people do really well, while a growing number of Americans barely get by. Where we can restore an economy where everyone gets a fair shot and everyone does their fair share and everyone plays by the same set of rules.
Someone's on the phone, 3 o'clock in the morning, yeah, talking about how she can make it right, yeah. Happiness is when
People of America recognize that this is a critical time. This is not just an average election. This is a time when we're going to decide whether America will remain the great hope of the 21st century, whether this will be an American century, or instead whether we'll continue to go down a path to become more and more like Europe, a social welfare state. That's where we're headed. Our
two largest Republican sweeps in modern times, 1980 in the Reagan campaign and 1994 with the contract with America, which had the largest one-party increase in American history, 9 million extra votes. I believe that what we need this fall is a big choice election that goes to the heart of who we are. I'm running more than anything and say that what we did, the choice we made in 2012 to unleash the American people. Do you want freedom and independence and a paycheck and a job, or do you want dependence and big government and food stamps and a lack of future? And I believe if we have a big election with truly historic big choices, the Republican, it will be an American campaign open to every American who prefers a paycheck to food stamps.
The previous two speakers that this is a big election. This is an election about fundamental freedom. It's an election about who America is going to be. We're a country that's going to be built great from the bottom up, as our founders intended, or from the top down. I just think I'm a lot better than the previous two speakers to be able to make that case to the American public. I'm not for a top-down government-run healthcare system. I wasn't for the Wall Street bailouts like these two gentlemen were. Governor Romney talks about private sector and how he's going to bring private sector. When the private sector was in trouble, he voted for government to come in and take over the private sector and be able to, and to bail them out. Cap and trade, both of them. Bought into the global warming hoax, bought into the cap and trade, top-down control of our energy and manufacturing sector.
I'm president, I will work with anyone in this chamber to build on this momentum. But I intend to fight obstruction with action, and I will oppose any effort to return to the very same policies that brought on this economic crisis in the first place.
you really feel good about somebody. Oh, baby, love it happened.